Some stories fade with time. This one hasn't. In fact, the longer it lingers, the clearer it becomes, etched deeper into my memory, like frost on glass. It began nearly a decade ago, and it's still happening. I live on the edge of a forest. Not just a patch of trees, real woods. Miles of wilderness behind my childhood home, passed down from my parents. A squat red brick house, weather-worn and surrounded on two sides by dense pine. It was isolated, peaceful, and comfortably quiet, until the footprints started appearing. It was a Sunday morning in midwinter, 2013, I think. Snow had fallen overnight, blanketing everything in silence. My girlfriend, now my fiancée, was still asleep, and I decided to treat myself to a coffee run, something I did every weekend. It was early, not quite 9 a.m. When I stepped outside, I noticed something strange. Footprints. A single set, clear as day, leading across the yard. They didn't come from the street. They didn't circle the house. They came from the woods, and they ended at the driver's side door of my truck. They didn't trail to the porch. Didn't stop at any windows. Just straight from the forest to my truck, and back again. Who walks up to a vehicle in the middle of the night, without approaching the house, and then retreats into the trees? I stared at them for a while, brow furrowed, until the chill bit into my skin and forced me to move. I asked my girlfriend later if she had gone out, maybe looking for something in the car. She hadn't. That was the first time. 2 years passed before anything else happened. It was February 2015. I remember because I was still angry about the Seahawks losing the Super Bowl. That morning, I walked out and froze, literally and figuratively. Footprints. Everywhere. Dozens of them. Around the house. Under windows. Along the fence. Even behind the shed. They didn't look fresh, but they weren't old either. Just enough to feel recent. And the pattern wasn't random, it was deliberate. Like someone had been studying the layout of the house. I jogged around the perimeter, checking behind trees, looking for any signs of a lingering intruder. Nothing. Before leaving for work, I texted my girlfriend to let her know. Told her to stay inside, keep the doors locked. She was shaken, but calm, until I got home. She met me at the front door, pale and anxious, and dragged me into the yard. There, she said, pointing. Look closely. I knelt down. She was right. No tread. No boot marks. No patterns. Just the shape of human feet. Barefoot. In sub-zero temperatures. In snow. Who the hell walks around barefoot in winter? The prints weren't animal. Not deer. Not bear. They were shaped like human feet. Toes. Arches. Heels. We called my father. He lived in this house for years before passing it on to me. He said he'd never seen anything like it. I'd sleep with a rifle by the bed, was all he offered. We debated calling the cops. But what could we say? Someone's been walking around barefoot on our property? There was no crime. No damage. No sign of forced entry. Just tracks. That night, I told my girlfriend I'd follow the prints into the woods the next morning. She didn't want me to go, but I needed answers. Needed to feel like I had some control. Rifle slung over my shoulder, I entered the forest at sunrise. At first, it was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels hollow. Trees creaked. Snow groaned underfoot. I followed the prints for what must have been half an hour, deeper into the woods than I'd gone in years. Then the path split. 2 trails. Side by side. I froze. Had I been wrong this whole time? Was it 2 people? I stared at the branches overhead, listening, heart thumping in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned back. Not because I was afraid, but because it was getting dark. That's what I told myself, anyway. That night, it snowed again. The tracks vanished beneath fresh powder. Nothing happened for years after that. We moved on. Got engaged. Life returned to normal. We even laughed about the barefoot guy in the woods. Until last year. January. Snow was heavy that month. I stepped outside one morning and immediately felt my stomach drop. Footprints. Again. But this time they didn't just walk around the house. They went to the shed. I unlocked it and looked inside. Tools were missing. Axes. Rope. A small handsaw. Nothing huge, but enough to raise a red flag. This time, I didn't hesitate. I called my friend Theo. Theo's the real outdoorsman. Ex-military. Big on hunting. He brought his AR-10 with a high-end thermal scope. We agreed to track the footprints the next day. Let's not make noise, he said. Let's just see where they lead. The woods were still. Lifeless. We followed the trail for nearly an hour before it split again. Like before. 2 sets. maybe more. We followed the left path. It ended, just stopped in the middle of nowhere. We doubled back, took the right fork. Then it dead-ended too. And again. And again. Whoever we were tracking was doubling back, walking in reverse, trying to cover their trail. And doing it well. The sun was setting. Just as we were about to call it, Theo raised his hand and crouched behind a tree. He motioned for me to stop, then handed me his rifle. "Look," he whispered. I peered through the thermal scope. My blood ran cold. In the clearing ahead were 4 figures. Naked. Huddled together. Moving slowly, deliberately. 2 larger ones. 2 smaller ones, children. Maybe. The smaller ones were crouched by a tree, their heads twitching, movements jerky and inhuman. I couldn't see details, but it looked like they were eating something. The larger ones picked them up and slung them over their shoulders, then disappeared into the woods. We sat there in silence for a long time, afraid to move. When we finally made it home, it was close to midnight. We called the police. They searched the woods the next day, with our help. No footprints. The snow had started melting. Whatever trail was there had dissolved into slush and mud. We told them what we saw. They logged the report. But without evidence of a crime, there was nothing they could do. Theo stayed the night again. We locked every door, pulled the blinds, slept with weapons beside the bed. That was 10 months ago. The footprints haven't returned, yet. But winter's coming, and I can't shake the thought that they'll be back. People think I'm exaggerating, that maybe I saw a group of squatters, or hallucinated, or misinterpreted animal tracks. But I know what I saw. They weren't wearing clothes. They weren't walking normally. And they came from the woods. They always do. And one day, they might not leave. I've always preferred hiking alone. There's something sacred about it. Just you, the trail, and the silence. Nature doesn't ask questions. It doesn't judge. It just exists, and for a little while, it lets you exist alongside it. No noise, no deadlines, no people. But after what happened on the Pacific Crest Trail last summer, I don't hike alone anymore. I don't think I ever will again. It started like any other solo trip. I had planned to hike a long section of the PCT over about 10 days. Nothing extreme, but enough of a challenge to clear my head. I parked my car at the endpoint and hitchhiked to the trailhead. I'd hike back to my car over the course of the week and a half. Simple. The first few days were uneventful. The trail was beautiful. Miles of winding forest paths, rolling hills, cool mountain breezes. I kept a steady pace, stopped only when I needed water or rest, and camped each night, just a short way off the main trail to stay hidden. I've done this dozens of times. I know how to stay safe. Or at least I thought I did. The first odd thing was small. Too small, at first, to notice. On the 3rd night, I woke up to a strange feeling. One of those gut-level alarms that your body throws up when something isn't right. I sat up inside my tent, ears straining, heart pounding. Silence. Just wind and trees. I grabbed my flashlight, unzipped the tent, and looked around the camp. Everything looked normal. No broken branches, no rustling. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I checked my gear. Everything looked accounted for, until I reached for my wallet. Gone. Not just misplaced. Gone. My ID, cash, cards, everything. I tore through my gear again, but deep down I knew I hadn't dropped it. I'm careful. I don't lose things, especially not my wallet. It had been taken. The next few days, things escalated. At first, it was just small stuff. One of my lighters disappeared. Then my Swiss Army knife. Some protein bars vanished from a sealed bag. Random, minor things. But by the 5th night, I knew the truth. I wasn't alone. I didn't have cell service. Of course I didn't. Not out here. I considered turning back, but I was halfway through the hike, and either direction would take days. I didn't know where the next signal would be, and the idea of stopping to camp again made my skin crawl. I kept moving. Fast. Paranoid. I started tying my tent shut from the inside. Slept with my rifle beside me. Every snapping branch outside jolted me awake. Every gust of wind felt like a whisper just beyond hearing. My mind began to fracture under the weight of the silence. It wasn't just paranoia. I started hearing footsteps outside my tent at night. Once, I swear I saw a figure crouched near a tree, watching from the darkness. Another night, I splashed my face with cold water to wake myself up, only to feel it trickle down, even though there was no water on my face. I looked down, nothing. Dry earth. No puddle. My nerves were fraying. By day 7, I was hallucinating. I'd see movement in the trees that wasn't there, hear breathing that dissolved into wind. Even my memories felt fuzzy. Had I packed that snack? Was that shirt missing yesterday or today? But the worst was the dream. Or maybe it wasn't a dream. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of breathing. Heavy, animal-like, just outside the tent. I froze. It circled the tent. Once, twice. Then a voice, raspy, slurred. Something like, "Nice tent." Then silence. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By the final day, I was done. Physically, mentally, emotionally. My pack was lighter, too light from everything that had been taken. My hands were shaking from lack of sleep. My skin was raw from stress. I decided to finish the last stretch of the trail without stopping, an all-night push. Only a few more hours. I could do that. Just keep moving. By the time night fell, I was already 2 hours in. Flashlight in one hand, rifle in the other. Every tree felt like it was hiding something. Every sound seemed targeted at me. Then I heard footsteps. Real ones. Human ones. I spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. And I saw him. He ducked behind a tree, too fast for me to get a good look. I yelled, told him I was armed, told him to come out. He did. Slowly, cautiously. He stepped out from behind the tree, and I almost dropped the flashlight. He was wearing my clothes. A pair of shorts that had vanished days ago. His skin was filthy, scraped, sunburnt. His hair was matted to his face, and his eyes. His eyes were wide, unfocused, like a wild animal. He started walking toward me. I shouted again. He didn't stop, so I fired a warning shot into the ground beside him. The crack of the rifle echoed like thunder. He flinched, then turned, and vanished into the forest. I didn't stop running until I saw the parking lot. I locked myself in my car and called the police. They arrived within an hour, asked me questions I barely remember. I gave them the description, told them what he looked like, what he was wearing, what he'd taken. They told me not to go back. I didn't need to be told twice. It's been almost a year, and I still think about it. About how careful he must have been. Slipping into my camp, never making a sound, never leaving a trace, only taking small things until he wanted to be seen. He wanted me to know he was there. He could have hurt me, but he didn't. And somehow, that's worse. Because now, every time I walk in the woods, I wonder if someone's walking just behind me, barefoot, silent, waiting. This story isn't mine. It belongs to my best friend's dad, a man I knew growing up as Mr. Hollis. He was quiet, gruff, always smelled like diesel and sawdust. The kind of guy who looked like he could break a tree in half with one hand. He used to be a logger. Not the kind you're thinking of, not a guy in flannel with a chainsaw. No, he was a tree saw operator. He worked those massive machines with mechanical arms that could grab and cut down entire trees in seconds. He made good money, but it came at a cost. Long hours, dangerous conditions, and isolation. This happened to him years ago, somewhere deep in the Pacific Northwest. A logging job so remote that it took their crew over 3 weeks just to clear a road wide enough to get the equipment up the mountain. Mr. Hollis never told this story publicly, but I've heard it. Once. And I've never forgotten it. He and a fellow operator named Griffin were assigned to the same site, high up on a rugged mountain ridge far from civilization. Once they got through the access road, they were dropped off with their equipment in a camper where they'd stay until the job was done. The rest of the crew wouldn't arrive until later. It was just the two of them. For 10 days. They made progress quickly, cutting a path down the side of the mountain. Things were quiet. Normal. Until the radios started acting up. Their equipment had two-way radios, standard logging gear. Channel 7 was the one they used to communicate with each other while operating machines on different parts of the ridge. One morning, around day 11, Mr. Hollis heard chatter on the line. Not Griffin. Not static either. Voices. Faint. Muffled. Like a distant conversation leaking through a wall. He switched channels. The voices followed. No matter what frequency he tried, the low murmuring voices stayed there, hovering just beneath the static. No clear words. Just tone. Calm. Conversational. He didn't think much of it at first. Just a radio glitch. Interference. But then Griffin heard it too. They kept working, but it became harder to ignore. The voices grew clearer, more consistent. They'd say things like, "Grab the water. It'll be colder tonight. Leave the boots." Ordinary phrases. But they didn't match the weather, or the location, or reality. And they didn't come from them. Griffin thought it was weird. Hollis thought it was wrong. I've used these radios my whole life, he later told me. That shouldn't happen. The next few days were worse. They started finding things. First, a rusted tin cup sitting near a stump they'd cut. Then a faded blue tarp tangled in the underbrush. Empty cans. A bent spoon. No trash piles, just placed objects, like someone had lived there recently. Then came the footprints. Small ones. And large ones. Farther up the ridge, Griffin stumbled on a makeshift campsite, hidden under the slope of a rocky outcrop. There was a tent, molded, weather-beaten. Inside, a single sleeping bag and a duffel bag. The duffel was filled with the most horrifying things Hollis had ever seen. Children's clothes. Dozens of them. Some clean, some torn. Several pairs of underwear. Duct tape. Rope. Crude, hand-drawn sketches of children in poses he didn't want to describe. There was a single photo of an apple, fresh on a stump. Griffin turned white. "Pack up. We're done," he said. But Hollis wasn't ready to leave. "Let's finish," he told him. "We'll keep quiet. Get the job done." That night, they hunkered down in the camper. They kept the lights off. Said little. The radio was off, too. Until it wasn't. Sometime after midnight, it crackled to life. "You get the water?" "Yeah. Enough for the little one." "Good. We can move tomorrow." The voices were closer. Clearer. Male. 2 men. Talking like this was just another day. Griffin wanted to leave the next morning. Hollis still refused. "I've worked this hard. I'm not letting monsters scare me out of a paycheck." They agreed to limit radio use to emergencies only. But the next night would be their last. Griffin shook Hollis awake just after midnight. "Someone's outside." They both froze. Footsteps. Crunching on gravel. Slow. Purposeful. Hollis reached for his pistol. It wasn't loaded. He didn't know where the ammo was. Griffin was unarmed. They stayed quiet. The camper door handle jiggled. Something scraped against it. A slow, deliberate scratching, like fingernails on metal. Then silence. Then, bang. The door burst open. A man lunged into the camper, slashing at Hollis with a knife. The blade caught him across the face, deep, near his right eye. Blood gushed down his cheek as he fell backward out of the camper and hit the ground. Then came the second man. He kicked Hollis repeatedly while the first climbed on top, knife raised again. Griffin, without thinking, leapt out and tackled the man with the knife. The other ran. The man under Griffin scrambled free and disappeared into the trees after his partner. They were gone. Griffin pulled Hollis back inside. His face was a mess. He could barely see through the blood. They drove down the mountain 2 hours of winding roads in silence before reaching the nearest hospital. The cut across Hollis's eye had severed the cornea. He would never see the same again. His pupil was permanently warped, distorted like a cracked lens. They reported the attack, gave full statements. A week later, a search team found the camp, but the men were gone. 2 weeks after that, a worker from a nearby logging crew was found bound, gagged, and murdered in a drainage ditch. There were signs of abuse. No arrests were made. The police couldn't confirm a connection, but Hollis knew. So did Griffin. Hollis never logged again. He wears sunglasses now, even indoors. Says it's to protect his bad eye. But I think he just doesn't want people to see it. To see what they did to him. The last time I saw him, he told me this. We weren't the only ones on that mountain. And they weren't living off the land. They were hiding in it. The fire tower had been abandoned since the late 80s. That's what they told me, anyway. Tower 113 stood like a rusting sentinel in the middle of Oregon's forgotten forest, a 5-story steel skeleton poking out of an endless green sea. Isolated, crumbling, alone, but still technically operational, according to the Forest Service. It was the kind of place you didn't stumble across by accident, which made what happened up there even more disturbing. I was 24, a seasonal fire lookout, broke, bored, and eager to disappear from the world for a while. The job seemed perfect, 10 days alone, reporting from an old tower with radio access, solar panels, and a 360-degree view of wilderness. My friends warned me, "Dude, you'll go crazy up there." But that was the point. I wanted to disconnect. Instead, I connected with something that should have stayed silent. Week 1 was fine. I filled my notebook with sky reports and humidity logs, just like they trained me. There were no roads nearby, just a chopper drop, a crate of freeze-dried meals, and a solar-charged radio for emergencies. No Wi-Fi, no phone service, just the wind, the trees, and my own thoughts. At night, the tower would sway slightly with the wind. I grew used to the metallic creaks and howls. It became comforting in a strange way, like being rocked to sleep by a steel giant. But the first weird thing happened on day 8. The radio came on, by itself. A soft burst of static, then a voice. Jesse. My stomach turned cold. No one should have been calling me. I hadn't spoken to anyone in days. I grabbed the mic. Tower 113. Repeat your transmission? Silence. Then, barely audible. You're being watched. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I scanned the forest from all directions. Nothing. No smoke. No hikers. No signs of movement. But that night, the radio sparked again. He's already inside. I ripped the batteries out and stuffed it in the supply cabinet. I wanted to call in a chopper evac, but protocol said only in true emergencies. I told myself it was just stress, the solitude getting to me. But then came the light. Fog rolled in around sunset. Thick as soup. Visibility dropped to a few yards. That's when I saw it, through the north window. A red light, pulsing faintly in the trees. Too low for a plane. Too high for a campfire. It blinked 3 times, then vanished. I stared into the fog for hours, waiting for it to return. It never did. The next day, I broke protocol. I left the tower. I had to know if someone was out there. I hiked north, following my compass toward where the light had been. After about 40 minutes, I found something I wasn't expecting. A trail, but not one listed on any map. It was narrow, twisting, worn by something or someone. The deeper I went, the weirder things got. A shirt, nailed to a tree. A set of boots, perfectly aligned on the ground. A cracked mirror hanging from a branch. And scrawled in the dirt below it, "Don't look at him." That was enough. I ran all the way back to the tower. That night, the knocking started. It was soft at first, like fingertips tapping metal. I froze, rifle in hand, ear pressed to the floor of the tower cabin. The knocking grew louder, slower, then stopped. I thought it was over until I heard the ladder creak. Someone was climbing. My breath caught in my throat. I aimed the rifle at the trapdoor, hands trembling. Then knocks. 3 deliberate ones. Let me in. But the voice didn't come from the hatch. It came from the radio. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't reconnected the power. And yet, it glowed. "Let me in, Jesse." I backed into the far corner. Stayed there until sunrise. When the chopper came 2 days later, I was sitting on the floor, eyes bloodshot, the rifle across my lap. I didn't say much. The pilot didn't ask. Back at headquarters, they told me something strange had happened. Tower 112, the next nearest lookout, decommissioned since 1989, had broadcast a distress call on my final night. The log simply read, "Jesse." But Tower 112 didn't exist anymore. It had burned down 30 years ago. They checked the transmission records, said there had been no power to the tower, that it must have been a glitch. I didn't argue, but I started doing my own research. And that's when the story really twisted. I pulled up archived photos of Tower 112 before it burned down. It was taller than mine, rusted red, same basic design. But in one of the pictures, dated 1986, I saw something that stopped my heart. A man standing in the window of the tower cabin, unsmiling, wearing a Forest Service jacket. The photo credit read, "Lookout Jesse K. Wilkes, Tower 112. Jesse, that's my name. But the photo was taken 4 years before I was born. I dug deeper. Eventually, I found an incident report filed in August 1989. A lookout stationed at Tower 112 had disappeared during a firestorm. The last transmission from the tower was short. Just one word. Inside. The fire spread quickly. The tower collapsed. No body was recovered. The man's name? Jesse K. Wilkes. I haven't slept much since then, because I don't believe in coincidences. And I remember something the voice said through the radio over and over again. He's already inside. Now I wonder, what if that voice wasn't talking about my tower? What if it meant me? What if the Jesse who vanished in '89 never left the forest? My name's Nolan. I'm 32, and I've been in forestry work since I was 19. I've done it all: trail cutting, fire suppression, treefall work, deep harvest. This story happened 3 years ago, during a 6-week contract with a private timber company in the Pacific Northwest. We were sent to assess an old-growth zone that hadn't been touched in over 2 decades. The area was referred to in our paperwork as Parcel 17. No coordinates, just a name. There were 5 of us. I knew only 2 of them before the job. My friend Cole, a longtime climbing specialist, and Anders, our eccentric but brilliant cartographer who preferred working by compass rather than GPS. We choppered in with our equipment, aerial drones, satellite mappers, radio kits, and chainsaws. Base camp was a cleared patch beside a stagnant pond. No cell service, no emergency access, no nearby ranger stations. We were on our own. The first week went smoothly. Parcel 17 was dense. Trees the width of trucks. Moss-heavy limbs that groaned like sleeping beasts in the wind. The ground was oddly soft, like walking across a mattress made of rotted roots. The deeper we moved into the grid, the stranger things got. Our markers vanished. Twice. We'd tie neon survey tape to branches, mark trunks with biodegradable paint, and the next day, it would be gone. At first, we blamed weather. Then animals. But animals don't untie knots. Don't wipe paint off bark. Then came the echoes. Late at night, as we gathered around the fire, we'd hear faint noises beyond the tree line. Not owls. Not wolves. Voices. Sometimes whispering. Sometimes laughing. One night, I heard someone calling my name. I thought it was Cole. But when I stepped outside my tent, I saw him, asleep, snoring in his hammock. The voice came again, distant and clear. Nolan. That's when I stopped sleeping soundly. Week 3 brought the first real incident. Jeremy, the youngest of our crew, didn't show up for breakfast. We found his tent shredded from the inside. No signs of a struggle. No blood. No tracks. Just an empty sleeping bag and torn canvas. His radio was still buzzing, still clipped to a branch like he'd stepped out for a walk, and never came back. We reported the disappearance using our long-range backup system, but response would take days. In the meantime, the remaining 4 of us, Cole, Anders, our supervisor Maya, and myself, voted to stay. The company offered a generous completion bonus, and none of us wanted to look weak. We convinced ourselves Jeremy had just gotten lost, or wandered off for some private meltdown. But deep down, we all felt it. Something was wrong with these woods. Anders started unraveling first. He stopped using the drone, refused to look at the topographic map, claimed it was lying to him. He started drawing his own map by hand, muttering to himself as he sketched trees with crooked limbs and black smudges. Cole tried to lighten the mood. Maybe we found a haunted forest, he joked. Anders looked up, dead serious. The forest didn't find us. It called us. The next morning, he was gone. Same as Jeremy. This time, there was a trail, boots dragging through the mud toward the tree line. It ended at the base of a massive cedar tree, hollowed out at the roots. Inside were carvings, symbols, gouged deep into the wood. One of them looked like an eye. The other looked like a person standing upside down. There was no sign of Anders. But in the hollow, we found a notebook. His hand-drawn map. It showed the forest as a spiral, not in square parcels, not in logical grid lines, but in loops. Circles within circles, like a maze. At the center was a word. Them. Cole, and I wanted to leave. Maya refused. We're under contract, she said. But she was trembling. Her hands never stopped shaking. That night, we heard the whispers again. But this time, they were closer. They weren't just behind the trees. They were in the camp. I woke up to the sound of my tent unzipping. A hand reached inside. I screamed and scrambled out, rifle raised. But there was nothing. Cole rushed out of his tent. Maya didn't. When we opened hers, we found it empty. Neatly packed gear, undisturbed sleeping bag. And on the floor of her tent, scratched into the plastic, were words. You can't see what sees you. Cole and I hiked out the next morning. We didn't have clearance, didn't care. We followed our GPS until it died, then used the sun, used our memory. But the forest looped. We kept passing the same dead tree, the same boulder with the moss ring. Even the dam pond near camp. It was like the forest was spinning around us, folding back onto itself. That night, we gave up. We made camp. We built a fire. Cole said he was going to pee. I nodded. He never came back. I woke up at dawn, alone. But not entirely. There were footprints around my tent. Bare. Human. Hundreds of them. In every direction. In circles. Spirals. And one pair of boots, Cole's, neatly placed at the foot of the fire. On top of them, a piece of paper. One of Anders' maps. This one was labeled Final Cut. I don't remember how I got out. I must have walked in the right direction, eventually. A helicopter crew picked me up 3 days later, barely conscious, dehydrated, half delirious. I told them everything. They said Parcel 17 had been shut down for over 10 years due to environmental hazards. The contract I'd signed? Forged. The company listed on the paperwork had folded in 2007. They asked if I'd forged it myself. I said no. They didn't believe me. I still dream about the tree line, the spiral trails, the whispers. Sometimes I wake up and the room is silent, but my ears are ringing, like I'm still standing in that clearing, waiting for someone to come back. They never do. I don't know what was in that forest, but I know this. We didn't find it. It found us, and it's still waiting.